Right now, as you read this, Windows 11 is quietly building a detailed record of everything you do on your own computer. And most people have no idea the feature even exists. Not what you've searched on Google, not what websites you visited, everything. What you typed in a private document at 2 a.m., what your bank balance looks like, the message you wrote and deleted. Windows is taking screenshots of your screen continuously and storing them in a searchable database on your device. Microsoft calls it a helpful productivity tool. I call it something you need to turn off today. The setting is called Recall, and if you're running a Copilot Plus PC, or if Windows has quietly updated your machine in the last several months, there's a real chance it's either already active or sitting one toggle away from being switched on without much fanfare. When Microsoft first announced Recall in May 2024, they described it as a way to let you search your own history, like a photographic memory for your PC. What they didn't lead with is how it works. The feature captures a screenshot of your screen approximately every 5 seconds, runs optical character recognition on every single image to make it searchable, and stores all of it in a local database tied to your Windows Hello authentication. Think about what that means for 5 seconds. A screenshot every 5 seconds. If you use your computer for 8 hours a day, that's nearly 6,000 screenshots captured while you work. 6,000 snapshots that include your passwords as you type them, your medical records as you read them, your private messages as you send them, your financial statements as you review them. All of it indexed, all of it searchable. When this feature leaked ahead of its official launch, the security community reacted fast. Kevin Beaumont, a well-known cybersecurity researcher who previously worked at Microsoft, wrote publicly that Recall was a privacy disaster, and specifically warned that the database storing all this captured data could be accessed by malware without any special privilege escalation, meaning any piece of software that found its way onto your machine could potentially walk out with your entire computing history. He wasn't the only one. Tom Warren at The Verge described the initial rollout as a disaster, and researchers at Cybernews ran tests within days of early builds leaking and confirmed that the Recall database, the file that stores your captured screen history, could be extracted and read with straightforward tools that don't require admin-level access. Microsoft paused the initial rollout. They said they'd make the feature opt-in rather than opt-out, and they promised security improvements. And to be fair, they did make some changes. But here's what nobody is talking about right now. The feature still exists. It still works the same fundamental way. It's still rolling out to more and more devices as Microsoft expands Copilot Plus compatibility, and the default behavior on new setups is not always as clearly opt-in as Microsoft suggests. Security researchers at recall.fail, an independent research site specifically tracking this feature, documented cases in late 2024 where Recall was enabled without users actively choosing to turn it on during Windows setup. Let me make this real for a moment. You're a freelance accountant working from home. You open your client's tax documents, you pull up their banking login to verify some figures, you type a quick note in Notepad that includes their social security number. Under Recall, all of that is getting screenshotted and indexed. Now imagine you download something 6 months later that turns out to be malware. Maybe something disguised as a cracked plugin, maybe something embedded in a PDF attachment. That malware doesn't need to keylog you in real time. It just needs to find the Recall database that's already been building for 6 months and walk away with everything. The UK's Information Commissioner's Office, the government body responsible for data protection enforcement, formally requested information from Microsoft about Recall in June 2024 and expressed serious concerns about what data was being collected, how it was stored, and whether users had meaningful control. That's a government regulator, not a fringe blogger, raising a formal alarm. And here's what really bothers me about this. Microsoft's entire justification for Recall is that the data stays on your device. It's local, they say. Only you can access it, they say. But local doesn't mean safe. Local means it's on your machine, the same machine where you install software, where phishing links try to drop payloads, where human error can let the wrong thing run. The idea that on-device storage is inherently private confuses architecture with security. A vault in your house is still vulnerable to someone who breaks into your house. Now let's talk about why this feature exists at all, because understanding Microsoft's motivation matters here. Microsoft has been watching Google for 15 years. They've watched Google build an advertising and data intelligence empire that generates hundreds of billions of dollars annually. And they've watched the core engine of that empire be something deceptively simple: knowing what users do. Google knows what you search, they know what you watch, what you buy, where you go, what you care about. And Microsoft, for all its enterprise dominance, has never had that kind of personal behavioral data at scale on consumers. Until now. Copilot is Microsoft's pivot. It's not just a chat assistant. It's the frame around which Microsoft is rebuilding Windows as an AI-first, cloud-connected platform where user behavior data is the raw material. When Microsoft announced a $13 billion investment in OpenAI and started embedding AI into every corner of their products, they weren't doing it out of charity for the future of computing. They were making a bet that whoever controls the AI layer of personal computing controls the data layer, and whoever controls the data layer wins the next decade of tech. Recall is the data collection engine. When Microsoft says your data stays on your device, what they're really saying is they don't need to collect it centrally because the on-device AI does the work of making it useful and actionable for future features, future integrations, and future monetization strategies they haven't announced yet. They built the cage and told you it's a garden. I want to be honest about something here. I don't think everyone at Microsoft sat in a room and decided to build something malicious. Some of the engineers who built Recall probably genuinely believed they were building something useful. The problem isn't individual intent. It's structural. When your business model depends on knowing more about users, you build features that know more about users, and you frame those features as helpful productivity tools. That's not conspiracy. That's just how the incentive structure works. When I actually tested this myself on a Copilot Plus device, spent a week letting it run, then dug into what had been captured, I was not prepared for how granular it was. It got my bank balance from a page I'd had open for maybe 20 seconds. It captured a screenshot mid-password entry on a site that my password manager had autofilled. It indexed a document I'd opened, glanced at, and closed without reading. If you felt like something was off with Windows 11 lately, like it's doing more than you asked it to, you were right. So let's fix it. Here's exactly what you need to do. First, disable Recall entirely. Press the Windows key, type Recall Settings, and open it. If you see the option to turn off Save Snapshots, do that now. Set the toggle to off. On some builds, you'll find this under Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Recall and Snapshots. Toggle off Save Snapshots at the top of that page. This stops new screenshots from being captured going forward. But don't stop there, because snapshots you've already accumulated are still sitting in that database. On the same page, you'll see the option to delete your Recall history. You can delete all of it, or set it to automatically delete after a certain time window. Choose to delete everything stored so far. Confirm it. That clears the existing database. Second, if Recall doesn't appear in your settings, it may not be installed. But verify rather than assume. Open PowerShell as an administrator. You can do this by right-clicking the Start button and selecting Terminal, Admin, or Windows PowerShell, Admin. Type Get Windows Optional Feature, Online, Feature Name Recall, and press Enter. If the state comes back as Enabled, it's running. If it says Disabled, or the feature isn't found, you're clear on this one. For devices where you want to go further, you can also disable the feature entirely with Disable Windows Optional Feature, Online, Feature Name Recall, though note this requires a restart and is a more permanent change. Third, turn off Diagnostic Data Collection, which is separate from Recall but feeds the same ecosystem. Go to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Diagnostics and Feedback. Set Diagnostic Data to Required, which is the minimum setting, but rather than optional. Scroll down and turn off Tailored Experiences, which is Microsoft's way of saying, we use your diagnostic data to serve you targeted suggestions. Turn that off. While you're on this page, also disable Improve Inking and Typing, which sends samples of what you type to Microsoft servers to improve handwriting and keyboard recognition models. Fourth, turn off your advertising ID. Still in Privacy and Security, go to General. It's usually the first option under that section. Turn off Let apps use advertising ID to make ads more relevant to you. This is the identifier Microsoft uses to track you across apps and serve targeted advertising. Turning it off doesn't stop ads, but it breaks the cross-app behavioral tracking chain. Also on that same page, turn off Let Windows Improve, start and search results by tracking app launches. That one is doing exactly what it sounds like. Fifth, review activity history, go to Settings, Privacy and Security, Activity History. If Store My Activity History on this device is checked, uncheck it. Also click Clear Activity History for this account to wipe what's been stored. Activity History is an older feature than Recall, but operates on similar principles, logging what apps you use, what files you open, what you've been working on, and feeding that into Microsoft's timeline and search features. Now, a few honest caveats before you go through this list. If you're in an enterprise or corporate environment, some of these settings may be managed by your IT department and you may not be able to change them, or shouldn't, because your organization has compliance reasons for certain configurations. Check with your IT team before making changes on a work device. Also, none of this affects Windows Defender, Smart Screen, or Windows Firewall. Those are security features you want running. What we're talking about here is data collection and AI training pipelines, not your malware protection. Keep Defender on. keep Smart Screen on. Turn off the surveillance stack. If you want to go further, there's a free third-party tool called O&O Shutup 10++ that provides a consolidated view of Windows privacy settings, including many settings that aren't easily accessible through the standard settings UI. It has a recommended settings option that applies a sensible baseline without breaking functionality. I've used it, it works, and it's genuinely useful for seeing how many data collection toggles Windows has that most people never know exist. Use it on a personal device, understand what each toggle does before applying it, and don't use it on a machine where your employer manages settings. Here's the bigger truth underneath all of this. The fight over your PC isn't really about one setting. It's about a slow, multi-year shift in who your computer actually works for. In 2010, your Windows machine ran what you told it to run, stored what you told it to store, and reported back to no one unless you asked it to. That mental model, my computer, my rules, has been quietly eroded with each successive version of Windows, not through dramatic announcements, but through default settings, bundled features, and toggles buried 4 menus deep that most people never see. Recall is the clearest example of that erosion yet. It's not subtle. It's a feature that screenshots your screen every 5 seconds and stores it in a searchable database. When that was exposed publicly, the backlash was significant enough that Microsoft paused it. That matters. That's evidence that when users actually understand what's happening and push back, it creates consequences. The problem is, most users don't know. They accepted the defaults during setup and moved on, which is exactly what Microsoft is counting on. You don't have to accept the defaults. You're the administrator of your own machine, not a guest, not a tenant, not a product. The 15 minutes it takes to go through these settings is 15 minutes spent deciding that your computer works for you. That's not paranoia. That's just basic hygiene for 2025, and I'd argue it's increasingly non-negotiable. If this gave you something useful today, subscribe. I cover these issues as they develop, not weeks after the fact. And drop a comment. Are you on a Copilot Plus device, and did you know Recall was running? I read everyone. Let's keep this conversation going.